Action Comics 1030, Philip K. Johnson and Daniel Sampier on the main story. And I only read the main story in this one because I'm not reading the.
As did I,
Yeah,
and
the
I feel like I need to read the Midnighter stuff because I feel like come July when Taylor takes over Superman, and I feel like Midnighter's really gonna have a lot more to do in the War World stuff.
Mm.
But man, I got to that and I was kind of relieved I didn't have to read it, you know. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Midnighter's just a character I can't get into. I feel like it's while he is not exactly bootleg Batman, I can't not help feel that way.
I think
You know,
I've not felt too much of the appeal of the character, but I think on top of that, I just I got to the page and the art wasn't screaming at me, I like this. So, but anyway, the main story, Action Comics. We're building to War World. We're getting War World Rising. We start with a whole, the evil Mongol on his throne, and he's all of his hench people, swearing allegiance, and all the rest of it.
mm-hmm.
And we have this mysterious character in a hood, and I love the art in this section, by the way. All the deep reds that because the character in the hood comes in and says, "I have a gift for Mongol," and empties his bag, and it's all in silhouette with just this stark red light behind it, but it's just heads, right? It's just all these decapitated heads hitting the floor, and then says, "This is the head of all your sons." And the hench people are like, "Oh, we'll kill you on behalf of Mongol. Let us kill this." And Mongol says, "No. We've established that Mongol killed previous Mongol, his father, to become current Mongol,
right?
And that's the line." And this mysterious stranger, whoever they are, have just made sure that at least for the time being, there are no young Mongols to kill him. So he's actually quite pleased by this, as pleased as Mongol can be.
So he went. So, and I just look at all of the other people, and I feel like they're all Mongols as well. So I feel like Mongol is just like whatever species he is. I feel like they've retroactively gone back.
Mm.
And man, I don't know, because I know they're not clones, but they feel like clones. Because just look at them, like the one that yells "traitor."
Yes,
looks like a Mongol with a mohawk and eye patch.
I love the one that's had his legs cut off, so he's kind of crawling around with a stick. There's a visual to that.
And he's like an old, like hardened one. Like, what was he called? Because he calls him. There's a name in here. I can't find it right now. Oh, Chadel. Right. Go. So yeah. But yeah, so this person who's giving me time trapper vibes, just with the robe, who's a Legion villain that in Legion of Three Worlds turns out to be Superboy Prime, which I don't think that's the direction they're going here, right? But the Stark hooded figure, it's definitely someone that we're going to recognize when the hood comes off. It's just trying to figure out
for sure, yeah.
Because they wouldn't, I don't think Johnson would keep him in Shadow or them in Shadow. And whoever they are they have a vested interest in making Warworld alive again. So I'm going to go out on it.
It doesn't even matter if it's Johnson. Anyway, like, there's no story ever that will treat this mysterious character with this hood in Shadow and not reveal their face without it being someone that we're going to recognize later.
Right.
There's no question. So
I'm going to stick my flag into the ground and say this is Cyborg Superman.
That's who you're going with, Cyborg Superman.
That's who I'm going with, because if back at Death of Superman, after that, when Mongol came and he basically had used Coast City to turn it into a new war world, and that's what led to Hal being influenced by Parallax, and then Mongol kind of becoming a Green Lantern villain for a minute and was part of the trying to collect his own rings and whatnot. It plays well into that. And as sci-fi as Superman can be, Johnson's really giving me fantasy vibes, and I feel like Cyborg Superman would push back just enough against the fantasy to firmly re-put it into Superman.
I mean, I don't have a guess. I mean, I think your reasoning is solid enough. You're connecting it to the history of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have I mean, I'm ready to be, amazed and impressed. I'm happy with whoever. And I love
And
this is what I love about this. So that obviously this says, you know, he this mysterious stranger says, you know, Warworld, there's more to it than you think it is, and one of the keys to mastering Warworld is, you know, far away, and that's the transition where we cut to Superman. And I think what I love about this is that all the deep reds and the blacks of all the Warworld stuff with Mongol, and when you transfer it to Superman, you've got this bright 2-page layout. It's all the whites and the blues. It's, you know, it's Superman flying through the sky. It's like completely different. The coloring just completely assaults you with a different vibe. It's like it's a horror comic, and then it becomes a Superman comic, and it's great. So, yeah, you have basically Batman and the Atom are testing Superman's powers. He's doing some like drone tests, and Batman's concerned because his powers are depleting, and he says it's consistent with radiation poisoning. And you know, the Atom's kind of like, look, let's not jump to conclusions. This could still just be the normal like variation of solar energy. This is nothing to jump to the gun about. Now, obviously, the only reason why we're giving this any credence is because we've heard from, you know, John, and we've heard, you know, various hints in the last, you know, issues that have set this up, that this is like Superman's actually, in theory, dying. Although obviously we don't expect it to last. But
no, it does remind me of All-Star Superman, where he got too close to the sun and absorbed way too much, and so of the radiation. Because Bruce brings up this is radiation kind of based. And they think it might be tied to the breach that him and John fought back. So, I'm getting vibes from that too. And Morrison had gone on saying that was based off of the 12 Labors of Hercules. And so I'm wondering if again, Johnson's pulling from different Superman mythos to tell his own unique story. And that here is a Superman that's supposed to be towards the end, but it's not it's not what you think. Right, like there's a reason his powers are diminishing.
I suspect there'll be a bounce back at some point, but Superman's not actually that concerned. The only minor concern he has is that if this news were to leak to, say, Lex or Darkseid or whoever, that, you know, they're going to try shit because they're hearing Superman's powers are diminishing. But he's actually still more powerful than everyone else. Like, he's not at the point where he's even not acting like Superman. But Batman does raise an interesting point. He says, look, John's powers are getting stronger. Soon he's going to be more powerful than you or Kara. And maybe you should talk to him about the League. The idea that, you know, there should always be a Superman. And it's actually kind of heartwarming to hear Batman say that, just because of who Batman is.
Yeah, because Batman has to think about this stuff routinely because he's human. You know? Like, that's almost why he has an army of Robins. It's to have a legacy after him, and the idea of Batman being a symbol, right? And that's what Superman is. So yeah, it means a lot coming from Bruce.
Yeah. For the record, I don't think Batman, like, when Batman took his first Robin, I don't think there was a plan or a reason for it. It was more just happenstance and...
You know, Operation Human Shield is what it was. Come on. I read All-Star Batman and Robin.
Come on now. No, don't use that as the example. That demented old Frank Miller with all his nonsense.
You mean the Rorschach character, Frank Miller?
Yeah, that one. So we cut to John and Damian, who are still hanging out. Shane Connor's not here to bask in the John and Damian camaraderie.
I do love it, and they're both in their new costumes, which is nice. And just the idea that Damian's on the run, right, because of the stuff that he's done that we didn't read in Titans.
Yes.
More on that in Robin. But he still has time to meet with his best friend. And, like, that's just, like, the whole, you know, everyone complaining about splitting up John and Damian and the aging up. This still feels like John and Damian Super Sons. Their dynamic has not changed. Yeah,
this is a core thing they'll keep coming back to, no matter how separate they are in their stories and their books. Like, the fact that we're going to have scenes like this where they do meet up and talk about what's going on, or like there's so much to do with these two being best friends throughout their life and all the different things they're going to end up getting up to. So Damian, being Damian, doesn't want to open up about his weird issues with his father right now, but John does open up, of course, and talks about how he's worried that, you know, the stories are all kind of weird at this point where it sounds like Superman's going to leave. And I actually want to read these specifically because obviously some of the stuff that happens later in this issue does kind of incorporate some of this, and then other things kind of incorporate other parts of it. So
Right.
it says one report said Dad got killed in the breach. Another one talked about a
Right.
big alien armada attacking Atlantis. Now, not attacking Atlantis, but there is an armada that shows up
Armada.
later in the issue.
Yeah.
That did not escape me. And then history professors had a theory that Cersei banished him to another dimension, and then that kind of sounds like some of that House of L stuff that we.
It is that House of L stuff, because that's what we found out with the one son. Yeah. But see, what I like about this is that time in the future is not concrete. So the fact that there's so many of these.
Can I say the last one before you go into your theory here? So, and it says the last one is that he got poisoned or something, and right before he died, a ship of Kryptonians came from the stars and took him home. Which again, technically, the armada that comes at the end does have enslaved Kryptonians on it in this issue, but also, the ship of Kryptonians also kind of sounds kind of House of L-esque as well. So there's a lot of like parts of all these theories that sound like they kind of connect to things.
Yeah, for sure.
Your point. What was you saying?
But my point is like, so he's looking at this from the Legion's perspective, but as we know from comics, is that time is not concrete, and especially in the future. So like the fact that there's so many different, like they don't even know, they just know something happened to Superman at this point, and then it just kind of falls off. And so I get John being worried about that, but the fact that there's so many. He doesn't know what to go on, so despite him thinking he knows, he doesn't know more than any of the rest of us do. So I do like that. It's that from what I understand of Doctor Who, that's the definition of timey-wimey, right? Like,
I guess.
Yeah, right? Like you can't, like, time has ebbs and flows, and it'll eventually right itself. Or, not right, but, fix itself and whatnot. But I do like that, and that he's kind of at a loss because he thinks he has all the answers, but really he's just as lost as, Superman is in all of this. But yeah, no, this I really love this moment between these two. And just them staring at the sunset, wherever they are. I'm trying to see, because it doesn't actually say where they are, but it looks like it's somewhere. I don't want to generalize a location and be completely wrong.
Well, they're mentioned they're eating a Pajmati roll.
So that tells me maybe somewhere near India, based off of the word.
It looks certainly that sort of region of Asia for sure.
Yeah.
But
he says a Pajmati roll is from the future.
That's true.
Why am I looking that up? That's
he says he says this is like a Pajmati roll. Sorry, yes, that was the actual line of dialogue.
No, you're right, because I started Googling it and it didn't come up, and I was like, wait, it's because it's not a real thing, dummy.
Maybe soon there'll be a DC wiki page for it, so there will be a result when you search it, but not right now.
Well, yeah, wherever they are, it seems, Middle East, India kind of vibe, just based off the architecture. Maybe, I don't know. Either way, that sunset that they're looking at, where at the end they're in silhouette, and John's like, "You sure you don't want to talk about the stuff with your dad?" And Damien just sighs. He goes, "Because we can." Like that, man. That's the stuff that I missed with these two. But it's good that we don't get it all the time, because then you won't appreciate it.
Yeah, it feels special when it does. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels special right here, and it feels like Johnson has it down.
So then we cut to the place we don't quite understand right away, but it becomes clear that Lois is, and we see how she's doing this in a minute, because I wasn't sure if they actually were shrinking down to go into the Kandor City bottle or what, but it's more of a projection thing. But Lois is in the library in Kandor, basically researching for a book she's writing.
Yeah.
And she's not really that concerned when Superman shows up, and they embrace. She's not that. She's like, "Oh, Batman said you should talk to John about being a replacement." Whatever. Batman's probably grunting a lot, but she's like, "Hey, even death didn't kill you, so I'm not that worried." And she also says that if she actually did believe something bad was going to happen to him and that he could die, then she would never be okay again, because he's constantly in situations. So this was a nice sort of, this was like just a nice bit of proof. If I don't know if we've had much Clark and Lois from Johnson yet, but this was a nice little just a couple of pages to show he gets it.
Well, yeah, and she's writing a book about Krypton,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is real cool. I like the idea of Lois, not so much because with how newspapers and stuff are now, it does feel true that she would have gotten fame as a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist that then transitioned to being a nonfiction writer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the fact, like in the Rucka book, she was writing a book, right? And now here with Johnson, she's writing another book that seems about Krypton.
It's not her first book, is the point. Yes, this is now her second book she's
Right.
writing.
And so I like that that's what they're doing here. But she basically talks about how the Kryptonian civilization was at a higher point than Earth is right now, and because of that, technically they were older, so that's why they seem more advanced. In their enlightenment, its industrial revolution, and its wars over fossil fuels and water, they were all behind. So instead of searching for resources or technology, it became a marriage of sciences that drove them, and that at the end of the day, they were all artists. And that's something new I've never thought about the Kryptonians. And that is kind of the marriage of art and technology and their social class system. That just, Johnson just added a whole other, layer. Because she says here that Kryptonian artists didn't just practice their craft on framed canvases and murals. They applied it to every brick and stone, every thought and sound of movement. So yeah, it makes Krypton seem that much more unique because I think at this point we've seen a lot of Krypton, right?
I think it maybe it. I mean, not that all of Krypton, even what we see in this Kandor City, applies to this, but the whole idea of the idea that a crystal can just like build a fortress, right? The idea that that feels like an art project. It feels like someone thought about this and sculpted what the fortress would be. Jor-El presumably. And then the crystal was able to sort of make it out of the ice of the Arctic. It's interesting. But Kal-X wakes them up or brings them out of the thing and
projection.
Says, "Hey, there's vessels coming into orbit." And he's like, "Wait, plural?" And we get this full page spread of a giant warship with all the little fighter pilots essentially around it. And Superman goes to fight. He says, "Okay, get the League, get them on board, make sure they know what's going on." John shows up. He calls the other Kryptonians, but John's the first one to show up, and they go fighting. And the cliffhanger of the main story is that when he rips open into the ship, the person, or maybe even both people that he ends up seeing, are two Kryptonian people in chains. But she's got a huge sword, and she's there to help fight Superman, presumably against her will. But very interesting.
So yeah, he notices that the little fighter jets are firing on the bigger ship, which doesn't seem, because it looks like they're the escort, but it looks, he puts together that they're firing on the ship for a reason, and he says that he can't see through the ship's hull, but he can hear something, and it's this phrase that is in that he realizes is a prayer in a dead Kryptonian language.
Yeah, actually,
not only are they Kryptonian, it's like old Krypton.
Yeah, it's just it was like a dead language even by the time Krypton died. I just said they're there to fight Superman. Yeah. I think I might have misread that slightly. I think maybe what's happening. I think when I read this earlier today, and I read that the ships were firing on the main ship.
Yeah.
I kind of took it. I don't know how I took it, but now I'm reconsidering it. Your mic's going, by the way. Now I'm reconsidering it into. Oh no, this is like because seemingly that these ships were coming to Earth anyway because they want Superman, because that ties into the earlier stuff with Mongol.
The War World.
But is the reason why the other ships are firing on the main ship because these prisoners are escaping and they're like rioting?
That's what I took it as. They were firing on that ship because they were trying to get away, and that. How I'm putting it together is that Mongol, if he thinks that Superman's the key to War World, if he knows where other Kryptonians are, that's the way to get Superman, right?
Yeah. Well, the question I have is, were they still, because given that the opening scene that sets up the idea that Mongol will come for Superman in some fashion, it would lead me to believe that these ships were coming to Earth anyway, and that maybe this riot just happened when they were already nearly here.
Maybe.
Or because if it wasn't the case, if this big ship has been commandeered, although it doesn't look like they're flying it yet, it looks like they're just kind of rummaging through the halls. It would be a bit coincidental, I think, for me to swallow that a War World related ship happened to end up at Earth with Superman, right as all this stuff is, being suggested to him at the same time. So
Right.
my assumption right now is that this was coming here anyway with all these ships, and then these Kryptonians have been trying to fight their way out.
Yeah.
So
Well, because that's where I was getting at. That if Mongol knows where enslaved Kryptonians are, he would know that's the way to get to Superman, right? Like you're not going to do a frontal attack on Earth and attack it that way. You're going to attack almost his heritage,
Wait, are you suggesting that they're intentionally firing on these other Kryptonians in Superman's field of vision as a ploy?
Not just as a ploy, that he's Mongol has tried full frontal assaults on Superman before, right? In continuity, and it never works for him. So what is he going to do? He's going to attack something else. We don't really have the Kandor City anymore for extra Kryptonians.
No, but what I'm asking though is, are you saying that all of this is a ruse for Superman?
No.
Or do you? Because I do think something has went awry in the plan here, whatever it was.
Yes, I do think what you're saying with them having the riot as they were on their way makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I'm saying the reason that there are Kryptonians on that ship is part of the ploy to get Superman.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And it's backfired on Mongol, but it's still going to lead to Superman on Warworld.
Yeah, because this is an interesting idea that some of the people that he's going to save by being on Warworld and rescuing all the prisoners, if some of those are Kryptonian, it adds an extra little layer to the heroic. I mean, he'll save everyone. He's Superman, but it adds a little personal touch to it.
Yeah. And just in the way that I know that people have said when you add more Kryptonians, it makes Superman less special, and I never really agreed with that, because what makes Superman special was that he was raised by the Kents, and that's what it does it. Not just that he's the last Kryptonian, is that he's a Kryptonian by heritage, but a Kent by the way that he was raised, and they raised him properly, and this is how we get Superman. So the fact that there might be other Kryptonians, because they kind of done this before. That's where the Daxamites come from. Is the whole idea that the Kryptonians at one point were spacefaring and colonizing, and Daxam was once a colony of Krypton. So just the idea that there's other types of Kryptonians out there, and of course Mongol would be collecting others as slaves and whatnot, and these ones happen to be Kryptonian. It might be that, or it might be he went out knowing where there's other Kryptonians as a ploy to get to Superman. And it backfired. I mean, who knows? But I do like how, again, that Johnson's almost taking this. There's a fantasy aspect to it, but there's also he's smashing it together with sci-fi here, because just the way that prayer is written out, it seems like something from I said it when we talked about Superman, the Superman book. It feels very John Carter of Mars. Which is that kind of fantasy, sci-fi, proto superhero book kind of deal. So, I love it. It's a good, fresh look for Superman, and it's really not like outside of Mongol and what I said about Cyborg Superman early on. It's really not playing with Superman like continuity. Like this isn't a Lex thing. This isn't Brainiac. So or so far. Or anything, it's all like new and fresh, which I think is kind of what we've been needing for the Superman for a while now.
Yeah, no, I can't argue with that final point. I'm super intrigued. Like I don't know what I expect, because I think I kind of shoehorned in or honed in on the idea that this was all just kind of an elaborate trap for Superman. But sort of talking about it a bit more and thinking about it a bit more.
Yeah.
Something has went wrong with whatever the plan was here, unless it is truly a great ruse where this is all staged to lure him in.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would expect that they'll deal with the action next issue, and then he'll actually try and talk to these two characters. But maybe these characters have been enslaved for so long. Maybe they're going to be hard to trust anyone, and maybe go fighting first.
And maybe they're speaking a dead Kryptonian language because they've been enslaved for that long that, that's
possibly
all they know, right? Because this is also peeling back a super dingy, like, piece of the DC cosmic universe, right? Where you're talking about slavery and, Mongol, usurping his father, by straight up murdering him and stuff, and like it's very dirty and icky, and I don't, how do you disinfect that? You shine a light on it, and this happens to be Superman.
I mean,
And I
this is
mean
all.
that's what we got from Future State.
This is all set up so we can tell, it's effectively Gladiator, but with Superman on an alien
Yeah.
gladiatorial combat ring.
Yeah.
And there's so much potential of him freeing everyone and sort of rising and like sort of, because one of my favorite parts of those two issues we got in Future State was that sort of like, no, my will not break. When Mongo's like, oh, eventually, I'm going to break you, and then when you actually do see Earth again, you're not going to be the person you were. You're going to be so different that it's not going to be the same. And it's all about the will of Superman and the integrity and the endurance of Superman and sort of being who he is no matter what. So all that is like a super. So the idea that there's these Kryptonians who might be quite savage because they've been in such horrible conditions for so long, this could be kind of the start of that hopeful touch of like him basically gaining their trust eventually. It may take some time. I mean, I don't know where we're going with this right away, but very intrigued. Yeah, no, the issue was great. I think this issue, and this is not to belittle the last two issues of Superman or the last issue of Action. I think this is the first issue of this Kennedy Johnson run that is kind of being what I was expecting after those two amazing issues of Future State. This was the one that felt like, oh, this is delivering the promise of an ongoing book that is tying to that, and feels like those where the way Batman talks about Superman, the way Superman talks to Lois about himself and John replacing him, all of this feels like it's fitting into that mold and everything I loved about those two issues. So this, for me, as far as out of the 4 issues of Kennedy Johnson Superman, although as we now know, he's not actually going to continue Superman. He's only there for a few issues before Taylor takes over. But out of his ongoing run of the Superman books, this is by far my favorite issue of what he's done.
I mean, it's hard to argue with those 4 because I got to pull out the House of L and Future State stuff. But this was really good. Like, I went to Twitter after I read it this week and went, like, it's really, 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 really good. And it just feels good to, because as much as I like the Bendis stuff, and I hate to compare it outright, but it has a different vibe, right? Like, this is more instantly to me, like the way that Bendis took over by, the whole Man of Steel thing and reintroducing Jor-El and just taking his big, huge swings. It's nice that Johnson
if this hooded figure at the start turns out to be Jor-El, I'm going to be mad.
Yeah, double down on that one. But yeah, or the whole Rogol Zar thing. Like, I appreciate what Bendis was trying to do. This just feels to me more true to the Superman character. I don't know. Just for what he represents and how he's going to do. And we see him, doing his fatherly duties and acting as a husband with Lois and whatnot. And so, yeah, it feels a lot closer to what I expect from Superman. And again, that's not to say I didn't enjoy the Bendis stuff, because I enjoyed most of it. But this just feels more of what I
mean, I thought Bendis. I mean, we do this every time. We always seem to start talking about the last run whenever we're talking about the current book. So I'm not going to fall into that trap. But no, Kennedy Johnson Superman's looking good. There was a lot of things I liked in Bendis' run, the revealing of his identity in particular. But so I'm going to start telling you off for doing that, because you do that every time, Matt.
No, I do, because for me, that's how it's easier for me to get my thoughts around it. Just because they are constants. Like, I've always read, like, they're books that I've always read up until, almost recently, or like Superman and Flash. So it's easy for me to compare to the stuff that I really like or I didn't like or whatever, And those are both books that it takes me a while to drop and lose interest in, but it's happened. There's been, a couple times, or each of them.
It's called the New 52. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what it's called. But yeah, no, I love this. I think it felt, Superman felt like he had that aura around him of importance, of the, like, what he means to everyone else, and we hear it from multiple places. I think that's what's so smart about this issue, is that we have Batman's opinion on Superman, we have Lois's opinion on Superman, we have John's opinion on Superman, and I mean, Lois talks I mean, Lois and Batman both talk directly to Superman himself. John's is kind of separate and talking to his peer, which I think is an interesting distinction because he is of the new generation. Lois and Bruce are part of Superman's world. They're part of his generation. They're his peers, whereas John is next up. So I do think it's kind of notable that he's not talking directly to Superman about his worries. He's talking to his friend. He's talking to someone he confides in a way different than you do with your parents. So I think all of this builds this idea that this book is very much about Superman. And I know that's like a weird thing to say. It's Action Comics. Of course it's about Superman. But sometimes stories feel like they need to actually make it really about who the main character is and that it's them that's at the center of it and it's them that's important. So having everyone be defined in this issue by how they're concerned about him, and I think the fact that Superman himself isn't that concerned makes us concerned because he's not taking it seriously enough, or he is not arrogant, because Superman's not arrogant, but more he's not seeing the threat the same way everyone else is. No,
because he's invulnerable and he never has to take that type of stuff serious. Yet there's something going on with him, that even Batman's concerned. So if Batman's concerned, it's not something to be taken lightly. So
yeah, so really good. And like I say, the art was wonderful. The horror stuff for those first few pages, and then the contrast to the Superman stuff with the bright blues. Sam Pierre. I think Sam Pierre is one of those artists I forget I really like, and then I read another issue with his art, and I'm like, oh wait a minute, Daniel Sam Pierre is really good.
Yeah, I like Sam Pierre a lot too.
And it's not the first time I've said that where I've read another issue by his. It's been a little while, which is why I've forgotten. But I've definitely said that before, where I'm surprised when I look at his art again and go, oh yeah, that's right, this guy's really good.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's kind of following up Janin and not really losing a step, with the world stuff from the design of Mongol, and it, those are big shoes to follow up. And I think Sam Pierre doesn't stumble at all. Especially like that, how you're talking about the contrast in the Mongol stuff, and then you turn the page and it's this bright blue, with Superman doing, the almost the danger room kind of test to test out his powers, to what the library looks like in the fortress. Those are all vastly different, and he nails all of them.
Yeah. All right, what are you giving Action Comics?
I'm giving this one a 9.
What a shock.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it an 8.5. I think I'm there.